Hey there everyone, my name's Lainey and welcome to Bread and Better here on YouTube. Today I am starting my sourdough starter journey. I actually have had a sourdough starter for a while now, but it died recently, so I'm starting over on a new sourdough starter journey. I have it right here. I have already filmed days 1 and 2 of maintaining and starting the starter, and I'm just now filming the intro to the video. I am actually going to be working through this book, The Perfect Loaf by Maurizio Leo. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but that's his name. That's the author. I think that it is very dense with information about sourdough, and there's so much that I can learn from doing the whole process start to finish. This will be like episode 1 of the Perfect Loaf series, which will be all about starter. If you're interested, I hope that you will get this book as well, because I will be doing things from the book, but it really probably would be way more helpful for you to have a copy of your own if you're wanting to also try to do the starter and learn more about sourdough, just because there's so much that I read prior to even starting his sourdough. I hope you enjoy the video, and I hope that you might also try this and come out with a beautiful sourdough starter by the end of it. So in order to do this, you don't need a lot. It's pretty straightforward and simple, but I will say everything that you do need is significant. So really the most basic thing is you'll need a measuring cup for water. I feel like everyone has that. So that's pretty simple and straightforward. Something that's super crucial to this that maybe not everyone has, but you're gonna want to invest in before starting this journey is a kitchen scale. I use the Ascali kitchen scale. I got this off of Amazon. Can probably figure out how to link this below. I don't know. I'm not super tech savvy, but I'll try to figure that out. You'll want something to stir your starter with. This doesn't really matter. It can be a spoon, it can be a spatula. I have just this little rubber spatula. I got it off Amazon. I love it. It's perfect for starter. I used to stir my starters with an offset spatula. So if you have that, you can totally use something like that. I mean, don't feel like you have to go out and buy this specific rubber spatula. I just like it. Something else you'll need is jars in order to put your starter in. These are Weck jars. I used to use mason jars, which I did really like. They were fine for starter. It's just, they were harder to clean. They come with a seal, but you're just gonna want the lid just to set right on top. You're not gonna need to really worry about the seal. I got these jars off of Amazon as well. According to the book, there is a way to do this with just 1 jar, and I've tried that in my past and I just don't like it. Like, I prefer to use 2 jars, but know that if you're doing this, you can just use 1 jar and be okay. It's my own personal preference to use 2 jars. I like to put the starter in a fresh jar each day rather than discarding from the same jar and then using the same jar to remeasure my water and fresh flour into. You're gonna want all-purpose flour. In the book, he refers to it as white flour. I use King Arthur organic all-purpose flour, but sometimes I also use Asia Standard to order my flours from, and that is where my rye flour is from. You could also use whole wheat in place of the rye. Of course, you can try to follow this without the book, but the book is going to give you so much information and be a second help for like troubleshooting. If something were to go wrong with your starter or something's not like working, you can use the book, and there's lots of information in there regarding sourdough starter and yeah, just everything. Okay, so for day 1, it is 125 grams of water and then 100 grams of rye flour. Now all you have to do is just mix it. Make sure all the dry spots are no longer there. After you've mixed it, all you have to do is put the lid on top, and it just says leave it in a warm place for 24 hours. 80 degrees to 86 degrees Fahrenheit is ideal. I have some tape in here and I'm just gonna mark it so that I can know what the activity is like, see if there's any rise within the next 24 hours. So that is day 1 of sourdough starter. So today is day 2 of my sourdough starter, and it is looking pretty interesting. you can kind of see like all these little bubbles, and it has risen some. It's been about 24 hours, so it is looking pretty good. And this was actually something the book did say, that you might see a burst of fermentation or activity. And I also should smell it. Oh yeah, it smells interesting. I'll say that. It doesn't have like that sour, like sourdough smell. It has like a kind of pungent, earthy aroma. Yeah, it doesn't smell like good sourdough smells. It has like a pungent smell. And it says that you might see a burst of fermentation, and then it also might have an off aroma. Basically, like, sure, this is fun to see, but it doesn't necessarily mean your starter is ready to bake with yet. It's just, there's a lot of activity happening, but there's not the strength, I guess. I'm gonna go ahead and get my stuff all set up to feed this. I also need to come up with a name for it. I just realized I don't have a name for it yet. One thing I also wanted to mention that I forgot is I was keeping my starter in the oven with the light on. I don't know that that's quite like 80 degrees or whatever, which is what this says is the optimal warmth, is like 80 to 86, but I know it's warmer than just leaving it on my kitchen counter. So I just added 115 grams of warm water like yesterday to the jar, and then I added 75 grams of the starter to a new jar. I'm just gonna add 50 grams of rye flour, and then today we're actually gonna start using all-purpose flour as well. So 50 grams rye flour, 50 grams all-purpose flour, 115 grams of water, 75 grams of starter. Stir that all together. So now that that's all mixed together, I just covered it. I put my tape on to mark where the starter is at to see if there's any activity, and I'm just gonna put it in the oven for another 24 hours, and then I'll check on it tomorrow. I just wanted to do a little update on where my starter is day 2. So I mixed it this morning. It's been about 7 hours later since I've mixed it, and it has risen so much, and I'm so happy. It was here, now it's here. It will probably fall before I feed it again, so I wanted to go ahead and just capture how much it's risen before it does fall. It might not fall. I don't know. It might just keep rising. Hopefully it doesn't just come out and explode. I don't think that it will, but that's it for day 2, and I will see you guys tomorrow. Good morning. It is day 3 of my sourdough starter, and it has been 24 hours since it's last been fed, and you can see how it rose and then it did collapse. So that's a good sign. That means things are active. Can see what it looks like inside, but it's still bubbly and kind of has a web. It's starting to smell like more sour, less pungent, I guess. So today is going to be exactly the same as yesterday. We're going to feed it 75 grams of starter, 50 grams of rye flour, 50 grams of white flour, and then 115 grams of water. So I'm going to go ahead and measure all of that out in a new jar. I'm gonna stir it together, make sure everything is well mixed. I'm gonna cover it with the lid, just like I've been doing, and then transfer my tape from this jar to this jar to mark its rise. Right now, I'm about to actually put something in the oven, so I'm not gonna keep it in the oven. I'll keep it by the oven because it's still warm over there. Whenever my brownies are done baking, then I'll stick this in the oven after it's cooled down with the light on. and just keep it in there until tomorrow. The discard probably isn't going to be good yet to put into anything, so I'm actually going to go feed it to my chickens because they really love sourdough discard. I've come to find out. So whenever I have extra, I just feed it to them and they love it. It's like a treat. Alright, today is day 4 of my sourdough starter, and I have not come up with a name for it yet. I need to, but I keep forgetting. But today is the day that we're actually going to be feeding it twice. So I'll feed it now, and then I'll feed it 12 hours from now. It doesn't seem like it rose a whole lot, and it didn't fall really any either. But it does have like some of these little bubbles in it, so there is activity. It didn't do a whole lot. It smells sour. It doesn't smell super strong, so I don't know exactly what that means, but I'm gonna keep going with what the book tells me to do. I'll go ahead and measure out my ingredients. We're gonna do 75 grams of this, 50 grams of rye flour, 50 grams of white flour, and 115 grams of starter. So the same thing we've been doing, but twice today instead of one time. Okay, so I just mixed my 115 grams of water and 75 grams of starter. Now I'm gonna add 50 grams of all-purpose flour and 50 grams of rye flour. It's all mixed, and I'm just gonna do the same thing I've been doing and keep it in my oven with the light on once the rest of the things I have baking are done. It did say that we should start to see more fermentation day 4, and I don't really feel like I saw a whole lot of activity, just a little bit. And so one of the reasons I think that could be is because I was not able to leave it in my oven with the light on yesterday pretty much all day because I was baking for my bake sale. So today, once I pull out these croissants, I'm going to stick it in there with the light on after the oven has cooled, and hopefully it will be, you know, more active. It's still day 4 of my sourdough starter, and I'm about to refresh it for the second time today. It has been about 12 hours. It hasn't risen very much at all. It still has a few bubbles on the top, and it smells slightly sour, but not pungent. I think that according to the book, it's pretty normal not to see a lot of rise right now, and that's okay. Basically, he just encourages the reader to keep moving forward and keep refreshing it as they're instructed, and to just wait and be patient, because eventually like it will build up, and sometimes it just takes longer for some people than others, depending on your house and the flour you're using and your environment and the temperature. So I'm gonna go ahead and feed it for the second time today on day 4, and I'm feeding it the same exact thing I fed it earlier this morning. I set the lid on top, put the tape on to mark, and I'm going to go ahead and put this in my oven with the light on overnight and then check on it in the morning. Good morning, it is day 5 and I'm about to feed my starter. It's going to be exactly the same as yesterday as far as ratios go, and we're going to be feeding it twice today. And that's gonna be for day 5 and day 6. It did not rise a lot, but it did rise a little bit. There's some bubbles you can probably see, and the top also has some bubbles and activity. All of that is okay. It's okay that it's not rising a lot from what I can understand. The next 2 days are kind of focused on building its strength, and it should eventually have more and more activity. I'm gonna go ahead and feed it. It's the same exact as yesterday. 115 grams of water, 75 grams of starter, 50 grams of white flour, 50 grams of rye flour. Now that I've mixed everything together, I'm just gonna leave this in the oven for around 12 hours and then I'll feed it again before I go to bed tonight. I am about to do my second feeding for day 5 and it has been around 12 hours, not quite, but almost 12 hours since the last time I fed my sourdough starter. It didn't have a lot of rise, but I think it definitely had more than when I showed it this morning, just a little bit more. You can also see that there's bubbles that have formed in it. The top also has some bubbles and it looks like there's a slight little bit of liquid on top. This time around, it smells definitely better than day 1 and it's starting to get more of that like sour, typical sourdough smell, and so it smells good. It's not super strong smelling, I don't feel like, but it's getting there. One thing I did different today was, I guess around, I don't know, probably like 6 hours after feeding it, I decided I was gonna actually see what temperature my oven was at with the light on, because I just had a feeling it was too cool really for the sourdough starter and that the sourdough starter really needed something warmer. And so I use this thermometer, a ThermoPro thermometer, and I just keep this part outside of my oven and then put the probe in the oven resting on an oven rack and then close the oven door. And so then this is sitting like on my stove top. It's telling me how warm it is in the oven. And when I did that with just the light on, and the light had already been on for around 6 hours, it was at like 71 degrees, like it was fluctuating in between 71 72. And according to the book, it mentions that your sourdough will be happiest around 80 to 86 degrees Fahrenheit. And so I was like, well, my oven's way too cool. So what I did was, after around 6 hours that the starter had already been in there, I just took some water in a skillet and I heated it up on the stove until it was simmering, and then I put that in the oven at the very bottom so the steam could release and like warm the oven. And then I stuck this in the oven to monitor and make sure, you know, it stayed within that 80 to 86 range of warmth. And I did have to like keep my oven cracked a little bit at first so like some of the steam and heat could release, and then eventually it just settled to like around 84 degrees. And then when I came back, it was like at 79. That was around 5 hours ago now that I did that. And so it, over the course of that 5 hours, it went from 84, 86 degrees, that range, to 79 degrees. So still way better than what my oven was sitting at before. So I think I'm gonna keep doing that just so that I can try to kind of experiment and see how the warmth affects my starter. And then also I think the starter will just be happier in a warmer environment, especially if that's what the book is telling me to do. And now, all that being said, I'll go ahead and feed this for the second time today for day 5. I want to show and document how the sourdough starter looks freshly mixed in this jar versus my starter that was mixed 12 hours ago that I just used to mix this one. This is the freshly mixed one. There's not a lot of bubbles. It's pretty thick and it's even kind of more grayish in color. And then this one is the one that was mixed 12 hours ago. There's more bubbles, it's thinner, and it is actually more brown and less gray. I just thought that was interesting. Okay, my starter's been mixed for the second time today for day 5, and I'm going to put it in my oven with the steam from the skillet going and making sure my oven is in between that 80 to 86 temperature range to ensure that this will stay warm through the night. So you can see where I have it set up to where the oven is warm right now. It's currently at 84 degrees, and then I have the thermometer where I can set it to, if it gets to 86 degrees, it will start beeping, so that I know that the oven is potentially getting too hot. For the starter, I feel pretty comfortable that it's not gonna get too hot. Good morning, it is day 6 of my sourdough starter, and I'm just gonna be doing the same exact feeding schedule I did as yesterday, and I wanted to update you on how it looks because it looks so beautiful, and I'm so happy because I think my technique with the steam in the skillet and the oven and monitoring the heat a little bit more and how warm it is in there really helped. Like, I wasn't exactly sure if that was going to be something that helped or if, you know, that was something that was affecting the growth of my starter, but I really think it was. So I'm glad that I took his advice and put it in a warm space that's 80 to 86 degrees, because look at how much it rose and look at all those bubbles within the past 12 hours. It just looks really happy. So I'm really happy. It smells good. It smells sour. It smells a little bit earthy, probably because of the rye flour, but it smells really good. It smells like bread. It smells like sourdough bread. I'll show you the top of what it looks like, and maybe I can even be like stirring it. This is what the top looks like. It's bubbly, it's active. I'm gonna go ahead and put this in my oven in a climate that's 80 to 86 degrees with steam, and I will see you guys back here in around 12 hours to feed my starter again. It has been almost 12 hours since last feeding my starter on day 6, and you can see that it's had a significant rise within those 12 hours. This is where it got to, and then now it's kind of starting to collapse and go back down. It definitely seems like it's getting a lot stronger. It also smells really good and very, not like crazy sour, but definitely sour, like a good amount of sour. I don't know how to explain it. And it's very bubbly on top. I'm gonna feed it exactly what I've been feeding it for the past few days. And this will be our last feeding like this until tomorrow, because tomorrow is going to be the last day of starting the starter. Because on day 7, you switch to a feeding schedule just to maintain your starter, but you're not really trying to build it up anymore. So this will be the last time we feed it these exact ratios. Alright, now that my starter is mixed, I'm going to just leave it in the oven with the light on. I'm not going to do the steam this time by heating up water in a skillet, just because I think that my starter is strong enough now to maybe be able to just rise on its own overnight. So I'm just going to see if it will or if it won't. Good morning, it is day 7, the last day of my sourdough starter journey, and I cannot believe it is already here. I guess I shouldn't say it's the last day of my sourdough starter journey, it's the last day I'm filming my sourdough starter journey. So yeah, today is very exciting. We're just gonna be feeding the starter what it will be getting fed for the rest of its lifetime. And I will get into what those measurements are in a little bit. For now, I want to show you what it looks like. So I fed this last night, almost 12 hours ago. I'm never exactly on the dot when it comes to whether or not it's been 12 hours, but you can see it's had a pretty nice rise and it has nice bubbles all throughout. So I am very happy with where this is and how strong it has become over the past 7 days. It smells very sour and nice and good. It smells healthy to me. I mean, yeah, it looks really good. I love it. It's great. So for day 7, I'm going to start feeding it 20 grams of discard, 100 grams of water, and then 30 grams of rye flour and 70 grams of all-purpose flour. So a little bit different than what we've been feeding it. The ratios change a little bit. That's really it though. It's still the same process and still going to be feeding it every 12 hours. So twice a day. So I'll feed it this morning and I'll feed it later this evening. And then tomorrow I'll wake up again and I'll feed it in the morning and I'll feed it in the evening. And that will be it for the rest of its lifetime. There are ways to store sourdough starter if you're not wanting to bake with it, but for the most part, I'm just gonna be feeding it every day from now on. But yeah, all of that being said, let's go ahead and feed it. Right there. Now that I've mixed it, I'm just gonna put it in the oven with the light on for the next 12 hours. And then I think today I am going to use the steam just because it's the first day that I'm changing up the feeding ratios. And so I kind of wanna ensure that the environment is perfect for the starter to thrive. It is time to feed my starter for the second time today and for the last time in this video. It is looking really good and definitely a lot stronger than it was just a few days ago. It rose all the way to about right here and now it's beginning to collapse back down. You can see all the little bubbles in it, and there are also bubbles all along the top when you look inside. One thing I ended up doing differently as far as storing it goes is, I don't know why I did not think about this before, but I literally have a little mini oven that also functions as a fermenting oven. So I can set it to 80 degrees and it will stay at 80 degrees for up to 12 hours. So I don't know why I was making things so complicated on myself by trying to do that steam method in the oven, which is great to do if you don't have a little mini oven like I have. But I literally have this little mini oven that is perfect for storing my starter for 12 hours until I have to feed it again. And I didn't even think to use that until today, the last day of this video. So anyways, maybe it's all for a good reason of having to figure out a way to store it in a larger oven and be creative in that way. I will get to feeding it for the last time. It's going to be exactly the same feeding as I did this morning. I wanted to show you guys the little oven that I have where I kept my starter earlier today, because that's the exact same place I want to keep it overnight and probably for the foreseeable future, now that I realize the oven is perfect for keeping starter in. So this is my oven. It is a Kasori. I don't know how to pronounce that, and this is supposed to be an O, but that rubbed off a little bit. But all I do is turn it on. I turn it to the ferment setting and then turn that to 80 degrees and then turn the time to 12 hours. And it has all these different settings. It's technically an air fryer too, so you can do a lot of different things in this oven, but I had no idea until today that you could actually ferment and proof things in here, and it is the perfect environment for doing that. So I just press start, open my oven, and place my starter inside on this bottom tray. And let it sit there, and it will keep it at just the right temperature for a total of 12 hours. I hope that you guys enjoyed watching this video. I know I enjoyed making it. Before I go, I wanted to let you guys know that the author of this book that I'm working my way through, The Perfect Loaf, has a blog also called The Perfect Loaf. And on his blog, he has the same 7-day starter guide that I followed. And I'll make sure to go ahead and link that below so that you also have access to it. I'll also link the book below so that if you're interested in buying that, which I hope you will, you can. I'll also be linking any other tools and resources that I used below in the description. If you enjoyed this video, I hope that you will go ahead and like it. I also hope that you'll subscribe to my channel so that you can see more content like this and join me as I bake my way through The Perfect Loaf. I can't wait to learn more about bread with you guys, and I will see y'all in the next video.